Rich Scarcella. Rich, great to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You had the first question with Jim Knowles yesterday. You watched the entire press conference and the give and take. What was the general impression you received about Jim and how he answered questions yesterday?
I thought he answered questions very measured, in a very measured way. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I compare it to the previous defensive coordinator where Tom Allen comes at you hard and fast, just two different types of personality. So it was a little different, but I thought, of course, he handled himself well. He's been around the game a long time. He's been in this position many times. But I think some of the things that he said that I think the main thing, and I wrote that, is he came to Penn State, fully intending to put Penn State over the top when it comes to the national championship.
See, I thought the end was the part that struck me when he was talking about what he could do, and he said, I think I can help. And I think that was the part, like at the end, that was an understated, no ego, powerful message. He thought he could help. I thought that the end was, to me, what the essence of it was.
Yeah, I thought, Mark, my friend Mark Wogerich asked the question, why Penn State, why this Penn State team? There was a story out Monday about why he left Ohio State from CBS Sports. Obviously don't know if that's true or not. But I know there's a lot of rumblings that there were some issues with Ryan Day and Larry Johnson, the defensive line coach, obviously longtime Penn State assistant, over autonomy and about calling the shots on defense. And I thought it was very interesting that Jim Knowles volunteered, without being asked directly, that he plans to mesh his system with the system at Penn State because it's been so successful on defense over the last several years.
So let me ask you this about the measured part of it. He hasn't been here that long, right? And there's a pretty good chance he probably knows more about the Penn State offensive personnel than he does the defensive personnel.
True.
Right? Do you think that played a role in being measured? Because, I can't specifically tell you what I want to do with Denai Dennis Sutton. I don't really know yet.
Yeah, nobody asked. I think somebody asked him about, the defensive system, how he would describe it, the one that he runs, but nobody asked him about specific players. Right. I think somebody asked him about the
jack position,
the Leo position, the jack. Yeah. And honestly, the first person I thought of when he was describing the Leo or the jack was Dominic DeLuca.
Yeah. So in other words, you were listening in on Jack Ham's conversation with me yesterday. There we go.
No, I was not.
We said the same thing.
I thought of that immediately. But my point is that I thought, again, I've never sat in on a press conference with Jim Knowles before.
Right.
But maybe that's his personality. It's a measured tone. It wasn't. I don't think he was trying to be evasive or anything. I think he just wanted to make sure he said the right thing. And he's clear. He's a very sharp guy.
Yeah.
And was I impressed with him? Yeah, I was impressed with him because he handled things in a very, again, measured way. Very not boisterous or anything like that.
Yeah, well, I was kind of hoping he'd answer the second part of Neil's question about exactly where he's going to be, which booth he was going to be calling it from. But that's an inside baseball joke there.
Yeah, Neil was. I think Neil was trying to find out where we're going to be sitting for the 2025 season more than anything else.
Yeah, I think I've got an idea where you guys are. It's going to be opposite of where we are. Because booth-wise, we're staying on the same side. Now, I don't know if we're staying in a plywood box. I have no idea, but we're going to stay on that side. I remember when Indiana redid their box. Remember that, Rich? And they're redoing it, and as you know, we sit out in an all-glass booth, which we refer to as the hot house, but that's just a nickname. All right. But when they were redoing it, it was plywood. And it was 27 degrees. We're all in there like,
yeah.
Gross. It was
I
cold.
think that was the 0-2 game when Larry Johnson went off in the quicksand.
Larry Johnson ran for 327 yards on sand that was painted green.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, what statement do you think it made to people that James Franklin identified a person that he thought was the best person for this job and was allowed to go out and get that person?
Well, first of all, I don't think, again, from watching from a distance here, it doesn't appear that he thought he'd be able to get him, that he'd be available. He'd be available. I shouldn't say that he'd be able to get him. I think it's a clear indication that Penn State, from the top down, is all in with the football program right now, and especially for this particular season. I think if you're a Penn State fan, you should be very, very happy with that. Mm-hmm. I think the commitment is clearly there from the top down. Obviously, with the financial, not only with Knowles' $9 million contract, but also reportedly Anthony Poindexter getting a raise, and also all of the players that they were able to keep. Obviously, they had to pay them something with NIL money, but it still shows that Penn State is fully committed to winning a national championship. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's the money part of it that's going to be interesting. How interested are you? Because the fans now know they're getting money. Now they're still 18 to 23. How interested are you in how fans will react to college players going forward? Because they've always reacted differently to college players than they have to pro players. Do you think that line has now been completely blurred?
That's a great question, Steve. I don't think a lot of fans, college football fans, not just Penn State fans, know exactly how much some of the players are getting. They've seen reports about this guy here at Michigan, quarterback coming in, or other players, maybe in Texas. I think they would be surprised, very surprised, to learn how much some of their favorite players are getting. Mm-hmm. And I think, would they be upset? I think some might be, but I think most would understand that this is the way the game is right now. I've had so many people over the last few years complain to me about the transfer portal, complain to me about why are they paying players when they're getting scholarships, full scholarships. And I said, look, we can argue that all we want, but we're not going back. And this is the way it is, so you have to deal with it.
And you do have to deal with it. I mean, there's no question. You have to adapt to what the current system is. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to keep doing it the old way, don't be the first person to complain when you're 2-10. You've lost the right to complain about a 2-10 season if you want to do it the old way, because that's not how it works. When you look at have you taken a long look at the House settlement and the $20.5 million that people are that schools will be allowed to pay if they wish to athletes? Have you taken a look at that?
I haven't taken a deep dive into it, and it's something that I would like to do between now and spring practice, and maybe I'll get an opportunity to do that. I mean, I'm well aware of it, and I'm, I know the money is coming. I mean, expected to come, I should say. But no, I don't know the details of the whole thing.
Yeah, because April 7th is going to be the big day as to when Judge Claudia Wilkin is expected. There'll be challenges, but expected to approve it. It's going to be interesting because you already know that what you just talked about player retention.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those agreements are in place because of the $20.5 million, and not just NIL.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, I use the NIL as a term only.
Okay, gotcha.
Not to mention the House settlement money, but you're right. And honestly, with some schools, including Penn State, if that settlement doesn't go through, there could be a lot of scrambling going on.
Right. Oh no, there's no question. Everybody would be in a scramble mode.
Yeah.
Because of that. Do you in any way? Yeah, I think I know exactly what your answer is going to be. But do you cover this in any way that's different compared to years gone by because of the money involvement?
I mean, what I write is different, but I don't think I change the way I cover it because, we're not privy unless somebody comes forward and tells me exactly how much players are making at Penn State and reveals it to me. We don't really know. We can guess. We can all guess. We have an idea, but we don't really know exactly how much players are getting. And that's the only change. And I'm actually surprised that more figures haven't come out across the country on players. There's some speculation and a few stories have come out about people, but I'm surprised there haven't been more.
Yeah. How important will it be to talk to Jim Knowles after spring practice and find out if he is still matter of fact about things versus actually having some answers in his own head about players? How important is that going to be to you?
Yeah, I think it'll be really important because he'll have how many months? February, 4 or 5 months, experienced interacting with the staff, interacting with everybody in the Lash building, interacting with the players above everything else. And I think it'll be really interesting. And I'm really looking forward to delving into his background as a Philly guy, the son of a Philly cop. And, I'd like to know more about that. I know somebody asked him about what he thinks it means to be, from Philly. And he talked about the toughness and resilience, and I agree with that. But I'm more curious. I'm curious to find out more about his real background. Like I am, and that's just how I am with everybody. It's not just Jim Knowles, but it's just with everybody.
What's interesting is, to me, it's not just the Northeast Philly background. It's the Cornell background.
Yeah.
And it's not as if Jim hasn't been a head coach. He was the head coach at Cornell.
Yep.
For a period of time. And I would wonder how being a head coach, Ivy League or not, has meshed with how he thinks as a coordinator where he's working one half of the ball instead of being the CEO of the whole thing.
Well, I think he's pretty comfortable in that. I think he made that clear yesterday, is that when somebody asked him about aspirations, I think it was Neil, he has no aspirations to be a head coach. He made that pretty clear. And he's 59, and, I'm a little older than him, and I understand where he's coming from. He just wants to do what he wants to do. He probably could be a head coach somewhere.
Sure.
Somebody would hire him, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I think, I think his head coaching experience is important. And I know, talk about complimentary ball. He mentioned that about what it's something that he has noticed and admires about James Franklin is that he's not the offensive play calls complement the defense. Like you're not, trying to score as fast as you can and then go 3 and out, 3 passes, and the defense is back on the field. Excuse me, Steve. So I think he's well aware of a lot of things. I think, I mean, just based on everything that I've read about him and what I saw yesterday, I think he's a really sharp guy.
Well, it was interesting because there's no doubt in my mind that reference was to Oklahoma State. You know, being in the Big 12, you're like, oh, great, I got to go back out there again? We just got off the field.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting how much the game has changed along the way. You've now experienced the 12-team playoff. In seeing the 12-team playoff, I know I asked you about whether you'd make any changes in or not, but just what do you think it's meant to college football to get to 12 teams in terms of the interest in the game?
I think it's a great thing for the sport. I think the sport needed it. I mean, we talked about the changes. I don't know if I would move the schedule back and have it end on January 1st. I don't agree with that necessarily, but I do think having a 12 team, expanding it to 12 teams, expanding the playoff to 12 teams, really drove up the interest in the sport in November and into December. You know, I think it's great, and I have no problem if they go to 16. I don't want to see it more than 16.
Right.
But I mean, if they went to 16, I'd have no problem with it. I mean, I think the interest is clearly there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think I that's the way I felt. I mean, ask Penn State fans how they feel about it. You know, finally getting to the college football playoff and succeeding in it. You know, I mean, that close to being in the national championship game. I think it's a great thing.
Well, you can usually get a gauge either on readership or clicks or whatever, or just people talking to you. Are you getting that gauge from them?
Oh, no doubt about it. Talking to people out in public in my second career, my broadcasting career, doing high school basketball games. People want to talk about Penn State all the time, especially over the last month and a half. During basketball season, some of the coaches I deal with are Penn State fans, and they ask me this and that, and I've heard nobody complain about the playoff like around here. I've heard. I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of interest in it.
Yeah, I think it's done wonders for the sport. And again, as I've said many, many times, college football's biggest problem over the years has been the people who run college football. They never have been able to understand what made the public tick. And they always thought that, it's great, we can argue when the season's over. No, I don't want to argue when the season's over. What the heck are you talking about? I want to find out who the champion is. That's just me.
Steve, have we heard since January 20th? I haven't heard, Alabama, South Carolina, whoever complaining that they deserve to be in the field. I mean, I don't think it's. I think you got a legitimate national champion, in Ohio State. I don't think anybody's arguing that they're not a legitimate champion, and that's because they went through the process. They won 4 games. I just think it's a great thing, and I'm with you. I never got it draws interest in the sport arguing over who should be number 1 or who should be in the 4-team playoff. I never got that. I never understood that.
Always a pleasure, my friend. I know we covered a multitude of topics as usual. You were outstanding. Thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure, Steve. Safe travels to the West Coast.
Appreciate it. Thanks. And Rich Scarcella, Reading Eagle. Always great to talk with him. And great to have you on board as well. This half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, hey, how you doing? I'm doing well.
I have to start with this. Under the category of, you have to be kidding me, Hal Steinbrenner is complaining how much the Dodgers are spending. When you saw that, again, consider the source. When you saw that, what did you think?
Well, I just immediately thought about, I wonder how George Steinbrenner would be running the Yankees days because, for years and years and years, he was the guy outspending everybody and not giving a hoot how much he was spending. So definitely a different, Hal is definitely a lot different than his father in terms of the willingness to go all in to secure the top talent available.
It's interesting, isn't it? Now, Sasaki was the latest big one for the Dodgers, but they're going to be up about $500 million. How interested are you to see how Sasaki pitches in the majors? Because this isn't always a slam dunk when it happens.
No, I'm super interested to see how he does. And all the reports from him from Japan is that this guy has immediate top of the rotation stuff. Throws in the high 90s, touches 100. Has some great off-speed stuff. And so, I guess I want to see if the hype matches his performance. Yoshinobu Yamamoto last year was a similarly hyped Japanese pitcher that came over. He had some injury issues, pitched pretty well in the postseason, was kind of hot and coldish during the regular season, when he wasn't hurt. But by all accounts, Sasaki is maybe better than him. So I'm really interested because they, Los Angeles right now has kind of cornered the market on these Japanese superstar players that want to come play Major League Baseball. Of course, Ohtani, then Yamamoto, then Sasaki. So, if these guys kind of deliver as everybody expects, man, the Dodgers have a really good pipeline right now of talent that just wants to keep coming and playing for Los Angeles.
All right, so Todd, with the Phillies going to spring training, what will be a couple of things that you're going to look for right away so that they can maybe close a gap? And, when I mean close a gap, I'm not talking about a chasm, a gap.
Between the Phillies and the Dodgers?
Between the Phillies and anybody. Let's just start Phillies in their own division and Phillies then maybe against the rest of the field.
Yeah, for me, honestly, I think it's just a matter of, and Dave Dombrowski has said this, they already have their star players. I know everybody wanted the Phillies to take a run at Juan Soto this offseason and whatnot, but really for me, it's just a matter of their stars playing like stars. Bryce Harper, I think, has certainly lived up to the hype and delivered year after year when he's healthy. I think you'd like to see more consistency from somebody like Trey Turner, for instance. JT Realmuto is entering the last year of his contract. You'd like to see him bounce back after a down year. You'd like to see Ranger Suarez stay healthy an entire season. So I think if their established players can just kind of do what they're supposed to do, I think they can close that gap. I would still pick the Phillies to win the National League East over the Braves and the Mets. I think they're the better team. I think they have the best rotation. I think, again, when everybody's firing all cylinders, I think they have one of the best offenses in baseball. I know people listening right now are going to go, yeah, but what about the last year in the NLDS and the second half of last season when they were kind of a 500 team? And I totally get that. But I think, again, just if the talent plays to the talent level they are, I think they should win the division, and I think they have as good a chance as anybody in Major League Baseball of knocking off the Dodgers in the postseason.
Right. No, I do too, because look, it starts with the rotation. To me, Zach Wheeler is exactly the guy you want to hand the ball to in any critical situation, but he's not the only one you have to hand it to. What do they need out of Aaron Nola behind him as the season goes forward?
Nola, for me, he's been one of the most durable, reliable pitchers in baseball, and he will have his runs throughout the course of his season where he struggles and whatnot. But for me, Aaron Nola, man, if he can just go out there and make 30 to 33 starts like he usually is, 190 to 210 innings like he usually does, I think the production is going to be there. I think Nola had a pretty solid year last year. Mm-hmm. He has pitched pretty well in some clinching game situations for wild card clinchers, division title clinchers, etc. So, for me, it's not so much Aaron Nola. I personally I am more curious to see what Ranger Suarez does this year. He was, you could make the argument he was the best pitcher in baseball the first 3 months of the season, mm-hmm. and then he had injuries and kind of struggled down the stretch. I would like to see him stay healthy and see what he can do for an entire year, and I'm also curious to see what Jesus Luzardo does. He's the guy, the lefty they got from the Marlins in late December. If he's healthy, he's a top of the rotation, number 3-ish or better type starter. Mm-hmm. And if he returns to form after being hurt last year, I think that Phillies rotation can go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers.
What do you think of the bullpen? Because, by the way, I agree with everything you said about Nola. Because if I'm sitting there and a number 2, and that's my number 2, in any organization, I'm feeling good about what I have. What about the bullpen part of it? How do you that's always been the one that in any organization is always the trickiest part, because you and I know that usually teams that go really far have 1 or 2 guys where it may not be their career year, but it's the second best year of their career.
Right. Yeah, I think going into the season, if you were going to put like a question mark on something, offense, rotation, defense, bullpen, you probably, I guess, put it on the bullpen. And I say that because Jeff Hoffman is now pitching for the Blue Jays. Carlos Estevez is now pitching for the Royals. They were 2 of their big right-handed arms in the back end of the bullpen last season. And to replace them, they signed Jordan Romano, who was a really good all-star closer for the Blue Jays for a couple of years before he got hurt last year. He's on a 1-year deal. They signed Joe Ross, who kind of pitched very well out of the Brewers bullpen last year. He's going to fit in there somewhere. But now you're kind of relying on Orion Kirkring, who's has a ton of talent, has a ton of potential. The Phillies love him. And they're saying, listen, we think that Romano is going to bounce back from his injury. And we're also really confident that Kirkring can step in and take step up and take a step forward as a late inning reliever. So I think a lot is really depending on Romano and Kirkring. We're not sure bets, but then, like you said, the bullpen, generally speaking, is volatile from 1 year to the next. Matt Strahm has been really just a blessing since they signed him. Yep. Can he kind of continue to be a top-notch late inning reliever? But they also need Jose Alvarado to bounce back. I mean, he was more cold than hot, I would say, last season, and he didn't really figure into Rob Thompson's stable of most trusted relievers down the stretch. But if Alvarado can find the strike zone again, now you have something cooking. But you listen to the answer, and there's a lot of like, if this guy does this, if Romano bounces back, if Kirkring takes a step forward, if Alvarado bounces back, they have the makings of a really good bullpen. They do. I don't think it's a huge stretch that those things happen. I think they definitely can happen. But again, it's, you talk about question marks in the team, and that's probably where I would start with the bullpen.
Well, you know what, though? If we were talking about just strictly the Dodgers here, they have some ifs as well. So everybody has that at that part of the team. Rob Thompson has established himself in many ways. What do you like about him as a manager? And every once in a while, what questions do you have about him as a manager?
Well, the thing I like about him the most as a manager is his ability to handle people. I truly believe that is the most important job of a major league manager nowadays. Mm-hmm. Of course, is it important to make out a good lineup? Sure, but there's arguments can be made that you move one guy up or you move one guy down. It really doesn't matter that much, depending on who you talk to. But having a manager that the players respect really is important. He talks to these guys every day, good or bad. They respect him. So then when he needs to maybe bench a player or sit a player or discipline a player, I think those words matter. So, he's just a great people person in general. He's fair. He's accountable. He's likable. And he reminds me a lot of Charlie Manuel in that regard. Mm-hmm. But I do think he runs a good game. I do think he runs a good game. I think if you had to nitpick something with Rob Thompson, and he's kind of acknowledged this, sometimes maybe he can be too loyal to a fault. I think we saw that a little bit at the end of the 2023 postseason in NLCS. He stuck with some relievers that maybe he shouldn't have. He stuck with maybe Johan Rojas in center field maybe when he shouldn't have. I think you saw him adjust to that. And my example would be Game 4 of the NLDS. The results didn't turn out, but he benched Austin Hayes, who they got at the trade deadline. They got Austin Hayes because they wanted him to start against left-handed pitching, and he got benched in Game 4 of the NLDS when the Mets had lefty Jose Quintana on the mound. He started Weston Wilson instead. Again, it didn't work out, but it shows that he's flexible and willing to adjust.
You know what's interesting, though? when I'm trying to operate a clubhouse 162 games, loyal to a fault doesn't bother me that much because you're out there trying to go out there every day and win games. And I know you've got to sometimes make that impersonal decision, but to me, loyalty is rarely a detriment. That's how I view it.
No, and I agree with that. Especially because one of the reasons why Rob in the past was loyal to a guy and maybe unwilling to make a quick change is because players, you mentioned the 162 game season, they're used to the routine. They're used. They can kind of smell fear from a manager. Yep. And so if Rob in the postseason is going, oh my gosh, we didn't hit in the first 2 games, we're going to go crazy and change the lineup, and I'm going to bench this guy. I'm going to start this guy because this guy didn't have a couple good games, and the players go, oh my gosh, the manager's panicking. I was just watching the Netflix documentary on the 2004 Red Sox, and Terry Francona was saying the same thing. He's like, the manager really sets the tone in that clubhouse, and they can smell desperation, concern, fear from their manager. And I think Rob Thompson does a great job of kind of hiding that. But again, and here's another example of Rob's willing to make a move and adjust, is that he benched Alec Bowman game 2 of the NLDS last year, So he kind of has learned to adjust and make changes if he thinks it's going to benefit the team.
Yeah. I mean, people sense panic. Rob doesn't look, at least from the outside looking in, I've never met him, doesn't seem like a guy that panics very much. You see what the Mets did in the offseason. We all knew that Cohen was going to spend a ton of money somewhere because that's his MO. Right. In reality, are they any better?
Well, I think they're probably better. I mean, Juan Soto, certainly he's on track to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's on track to be one of the greatest hitters in baseball history. So anytime you add a guy like that, I think certainly, you could say you make the improvement. But they don't really have anybody to play first base right now. They're kind of in a contract stalemate with Pete Alonso. So if they don't bring back Pete, that's a 30, 40 home run guy you lose. You add Soto, you lose Alonso. So are they better? They didn't really go out, in my opinion, and get that surefire, lockdown, number 1 Zach Wheeler type guy in the rotation. I think they're very good. Could they come into the playoffs again and get to the World Series? Sure, they absolutely could. But again, on paper, I would take the Phillies as a better team. I might even take the Braves as a better team.
Yes, I agree.
They're going to get Ronald Acuna Jr. back. They're going to get Spencer Strider back. They're expecting some. Austin Riley is going to be back. He missed some time last year, so maybe a bounce back season for Matt Olson. So, I think a lot of people are focusing on the Mets because they got Soto, but I think if you asked people across baseball how to rank the division, I don't think you would get a consensus or maybe even a majority of people that would say the Mets are the NL East favorites.
Right. Well, agreed. Look, the Phillies are a better team. I agree with you. The Braves are a better team. Soto's interesting. Very few players have the concept of the strike zone that he does. He is a great hitter. He is a mediocre base runner. And he's actually, when you watch him in terms of a route runner in the outfield, he's mediocre. He's a very interesting, to me, he is. There's a lot of contradictions with him, but there's no doubt as a strike zone guy and as a hitter, he's fabulous. That's my opinion.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, I watching him play, even with the Padres, when he was at the Padres in 2022 in the NLCS, I was like, gosh, this guy is just not a very good defender. You saw it with him when he was with the Nationals as well. Mm-hmm. But, I was like, wow, I guess I didn't realize that he was that average or below average defensively.
Yep.
You're not getting him for the glove, of course, but you like to have those complete players whenever you can. But, yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic player to watch. He's going to cause the Phillies tons of fits over the next decade or so, but you don't get a home run every time you get up to bat either.
How excited are you just to see them get on the field and go to spring training again? Because when I was at the Fiesta Bowl for that, Penn State practiced at the Angels complex, and I was like, man, spring training's going to be in a month. It was kind of exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I will say, when the season ends, it's great to have a break.
And then, of course, I have 3 little kids at home, so Halloween, and you have Thanksgiving, and you have Christmas, and then you have New Year's. And so that's a lot of fun, of course. But then once New Year's Day passes, and then you look outside, and all you see is like this cold, gray, dreary weather. All the leaves are gone, and I start going, oh, man. I can picture myself in Clearwater in 75-degree sunny weather. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting down there. It's going to be, it's always exciting those first few days. Just to get outside, warm weather. You see the guys in uniform. You start to feel like it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for all the players and for the fans and even the people that are writing about the team, like myself.
Yeah. Again, once you get to that certain point. The spring training to me is still that feeling of renewal. That's still the way I look at it. Hey, thanks.
I always tell people that, anytime a Phillies fan, they go, "Oh, do you go to spring training?" And I always ask them, like, "Have you ever been?" And a lot of people, of course, have been to Clearwater for spring training. I sit and then they go, "No, I've never been." I go, "Well, I'm telling you, that should be a bucket list item for every Phillies fan. If you get an opportunity to go to Clearwater for a few days, a long weekend, go for a week, stay down by the beach, have a grouper sandwich, and watch some Phillies baseball. Trust me when I say it'll be a great memory for you, down the road."
That's always fun. Todd, by the way, how old are the kids?
8, 5, and 21 months.
Oh, it is a fun life for you. All right. Love it.
Yeah, it's busy, man. It's busy.
That's great. Oh, that's great. Todd, thanks so much. Look forward to checking in with you as often as possible. And again, the Philly Show with Ruben Amaro Jr., Todd, and Jim Salisbury, available where you get your podcast. Thanks so much, Todd.
Thanks. Take care anytime. Bye-bye.
Todd Zalecki joining us.